Hey chickens, welcome to another Self-Love September resource. In this installment I'm going to be talking about sexual confidence, boldness, really being able to feel yourself, being able to feel sensual on your own, feel sensual and sexual with partners. For some people this is not going to be relevant, and for some people it's not even going to be remotely comfortable, and that's fine. I'm not expecting anyone to sit through this resource who isn't going to get something out of it, but I do think that a big part of the self-love journey for a lot of people is combating fears around sexual intimacy, issues with sexual confidence. And so I just want to put forward a few different ideas in this resource that may be of help to people who want to make that firm commitment to feeling more sexually confident and comfortable with themselves and their sexuality. And I just want to begin by advising anyone who does want to be more sexually confident and more sexually adventurous or expressive that one of the best places to start is by making that commitment with yourself that that is a journey that you want to go on, that that is an adventure that you want to have. And it's really about consciously bringing that desire into your line of sight, so you can be honest with yourself about the fact that there are issues in that area and that you do actually want to get out of your own way in that area and have a different kind of experience. A lot of the time with sexual confidence and assertiveness or expressiveness and stuff like that, we can suppress for ages the fact that we even have issues in that area because we're embarrassed, or we don't want to talk to a partner or friends or whatever about it because we don't want them to be embarrassed, or we just feel like we cannot come forward with it. Suppressing our issues around sexual openness and confidence leads to being in a state of denial, and then once we're in a state of denial for a while, we're denying to even ourselves, let alone anyone else, that there is a problem. So when you bring it forth, when you actually acknowledge it, when you write it down or you say it out loud or you say it to someone else, it becomes a real thing. You admit that there are issues in that area and that you don't think it's self-loving to continue to deny and suppress those issues. You would far rather actually get to the bottom of them and work with them and confront them and end up having a better sex life and a better feeling of who you are as a sensual being. If you struggle with your sexuality, if you struggle with sexual confidence, if you struggle to express what you want sexually, you might want to start by thinking about sensuality, about the idea of deriving pleasure from the senses. Sensuality can be in reference to sex and sexuality, but not only. It's really about being dazzled by the experience of the senses in general and being very visceral about that and really being in that. And that's something that we should be able to do completely on our own. We do not need somebody else to turn us on to those feelings of sensuality and really being connected to the body and the pleasure that can be derived from being in the body and the pleasure that can be experienced from having five senses. We don't need anyone else to affirm that for us. We don't need anyone else to be around when we actually experience it. You can be sensual on your own with nobody else around in a ton of different ways aside from actual self-pleasuring. So if you want, you can give yourself a massage, you can give yourself a bath, you can put on some really nice perfume and just kind of lie naked in a blanket and just feel what that feels like to be in your body and to have access to your senses in that way. You can try running your fingers through your own hair, you can lie down on the grass outside, just feel the feeling of being in your senses, enjoy that feeling of being in your senses, try and find things that heighten that experience of being in your senses, and then savor those things that you're doing to heighten the five senses. Really zoom in on those things as you're doing them. When was the last time that you just paid very special, very careful attention to what's happening to your body, to the way that your muscles feel, the way that your skin feels, the way that the wind feels through your hair, the way that it feels to listen to the traffic outside in the street or hear a bird crowing or crying? It's all about being immersed, and it's about the enjoyment of being immersed, and it's finding those things that give you the pleasure of the five senses in particular, and everybody's very different about that. Some people really enjoy long hot baths where they soak in really nice products and they've got candles going that are scented. Some people love that. Other people love to go out and walk in the rain and just feel the rain drenching through their clothes, making contact with the skin and just getting their hair all wet and just being out there underneath the thundery sky or in the midst of a very thick shower, and that feels really good for them. I'm sure that every single person watching this video can think of something that particularly feels really good for them physically, that they can give to themselves, and they can really lean into that and immerse themselves in that. And why am I talking about this particularly rather than talking about sexy stuff? The reason I'm talking about sensuality in a more general way, where we are just using the five senses to derive pleasure, is because a lot of the time people that have issues with sexual confidence or expression need to give themselves permission to just seek their own pleasure in general and enjoy the feeling of having pleasure in general. Far too many people that struggle with sexual confidence and sexual expression are very invested in what a partner might want and very eager to please a partner with whatever they want, but they don't often give themselves the permission to think about what they want and what would feel pleasing to them. And it's very difficult for them to allow even the most willing of partners to give them what they want, because they feel like they're not entitled to seek it, they're not entitled to go after it, or maybe they're not entitled to have the time spent on them that it would take to experience that pleasure. So ask yourself, are you somebody that sort of cuts yourself off from your own pleasure zones and your own pleasurable experiences? Are you more concerned sometimes with what a partner might want sexually than what you want sexually? And in other scenarios, are you more concerned with what other people might want out of life or out of the experience than you are thinking about what would make it good for you? Because I do think that when we look at our ability to seek pleasure in general, or to seek pleasure physically overall, there's a correlation a lot of the time with how much we allow ourselves to seek pleasure in sexual scenarios. Notice what you're like when you feel sexy and when you feel sensual and when you're feeling yourself and you just feel good in your body, and maybe you feel overly sexual, or maybe you just feel sensual in that more general or romantic way where you're kind of plugged in to the five senses and you're plugged into life. Do you have an alter ego that comes out at those times? And is that an alter ego that you can tap into when you're alone? Does that alter ego or that altered state of being only come into play when somebody else flicks the switch for you, when somebody else pushes those particular buttons that lead to the alter ego coming out? Or is it something that you can actually harness yourself and have for yourself? I know that for me, I feel often supremely switched on to my body and very confident and very expressive when I'm dancing. Nobody else needs to be around me to make that happen. It's just one of those things that's happening for me, and it gives me access to this very supreme, very like elevated feeling of being in my body that is incredibly intense. And does it ever get sexual? Can it be sexual and sensual with a partner? Absolutely. Dancing is super sexual. Have you ever watched a guy and a girl doing flamenco? Oh my good goddess, it can get sensual, but it doesn't need to be sensual dependent upon another human being. And that's what I'm asking you to explore. I'm asking you to explore things that make you feel sensual for you, and think about who you are as a sensual being without anybody else even being involved in the scenario. And that's really the power of having sexual confidence when you are with a partner. It's knowing what you like and what feels good when you're on your own. And obviously self-pleasuring is a part of that, and some people will really want that to be a part of what they do when they're alone and feeling sensual, and other people won't so much. But my point that I'm making is that it's so much broader than that. There's so many other things you can do to feel sensual and get the sexual confidence aspect going. If you are lacking in sexual confidence because you feel embarrassed about the kinds of things that you want in the bedroom, or you feel like you don't look right or feel right within yourself, I would definitely recommend that you don't sell yourself on this idea that you need to look different or be different or change yourself in some way in order for that sexual confidence to come through. Lots of people go on this journey to lose weight or change their appearance in some way and feel better about themselves, and they find that they're still encountering the same problems with sexual confidence and sexual assertiveness. To the greatest extent that we can, it's really good for us to give ourselves permission to start to feel more sensual and more sexually confident as we are right now, because we want any sex that we're having in the present to be fulfilling in the present. We don't want to start wishing on a distant star, thinking about a far off dream of a time where we feel really, really super confident and happy with ourselves, and then we further separate ourselves from the ability to feel sensual and sexual and sexually confident right now at this moment in time in the present. I'm not saying that some of the changes you want to make won't lead you to feel more sexually confident and more sexually expressive, but what I am saying is you shouldn't get too hung up on the idea that that is what you need, because plenty of people reach that goalpost in the far distance and then they realise they're still encountering the same problems, they still have the same insecurities, and in some cases their insecurities have actually increased. So we do need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of selling ourselves on the dream of changing, of augmenting ourselves surgically, or losing a shitload of weight, or whatever the case may be, and then becoming some sexual dynamo who's going to be super confident and very assertive. It doesn't always happen that way. And I think everybody should allow themselves to feel more sensual and seek a greater degree of sexual confidence in the now, rather than thinking only about what can be available for them in the future after they've been through loads of changes and done loads of stuff to themselves, or whatever the case may be. And that kind of takes us back in a way to the original point that I made, which was about sensuality and the experience of just being in your body, enjoying your five senses, witnessing what they can give you and witnessing the magnitude of being immersed in them. This is something that you don't need to change for. You don't need to wait until that far off time in the future to start giving yourself permission to figure out what feels good for you and what actually gives you a sense of really pleasurable sensation. So much of the information that you pick up when you're trying to figure out what makes your body feel good, what makes your senses feel elevated, what gives you pleasure, can be translated or interpreted into what goes on sexually with you and any partners that you may have. So the more that you sort of go on an exploration to figure out what feels good for you sensually and sexually, the more you then can take that information and you can use it where it counts with other people, with partners of yours, you know. So you begin to learn and pick up on what is pleasurable for you, and then you can interpret that in the bedroom situation. So it's really about learning what makes you feel good, and then the more that you have this sort of back catalogue of what makes you feel good, this document inside your mind, if you like, of what makes you feel good, the more hopefully you will feel moved to want to bring that into the sexual aspect of yourself with partners. And then it's really about giving yourself that permission to enjoy those feelings, to derive that pleasure from sexual situations. If you're somebody that has for a very long time lacked sexual confidence or is scared of talking about what you want, you may need to think about the kinds of partners that you're choosing. Are they the kinds of partners that actually you feel would hold space for you to talk about what you want and experiment with what you want? Are they the kinds of partners that would give you the time to actually work through what you want? Do they want to please you, in other words? And I think the other thing you need to think about is, are you telling yourself loads of crappy stories about what is going to happen if you start to relax more into your sexual desires and start to be confident enough to show other people what you want, to show partners what you want and actually request what you want? Because there are lots of people that have this very insecure, paranoid feeling that if they start to really sort of be in their sexual expression more with partners, that they're going to be ridiculed or rejected, or it's going to be weird, or they're going to be dismissed out of hand or whatever. But actually, in a consenting situation between partners that want to please each other, it should be okay at the end of the experience to very much feel that you have had pleasure from the experience as well, and it hasn't just all been about the other person. It's very easy to tell yourself that something terrible is going to happen if you start to be more sexually confident and sexually expressive, but actually with a partner who cares about you, who has your best interests at heart and who enjoys being sexual with you, they are going to want to see you in your sexual confidence. That is going to be hot, that is going to be a turn on. So it's really about you kind of asking yourself, whereabouts are you catastrophizing and building up a story in your head of what's going to happen if you become your sexual self and allow that part of you to come out into the open. You might surprise yourself a little bit with what you want sexually, and sometimes part of a person's self-love journey is to go on an adventure to figure out actually what that individual wants sexually, what really excites them, what interests them sexually. A lot of people, when they were growing up, particularly women, did not give themselves the opportunity to actually think about what they wanted sexually and to question that. And there are tons of people that are labouring under all kinds of misapprehensions about what they want because they were so busy trying to please the partner that they were in a sexual connection with, that they kind of missed the boat when it came to thinking about what they enjoy and what they might like to explore, or what is really kind of calling to them and speaking to them in terms of sexuality. So let me just circulate back to something I mentioned a little bit earlier about communication with your partner and questioning whether or not your partner is the kind of person that you feel would let you open up and would hold space for you. If you feel like you do know what your desires are, or there are things that you would like to try or do differently, but you feel like you can't express that, you can't really say that, I would ask you to think about what you want your standards of communication to be when it comes to sexual partners and sexual activity. Do you feel that you should be able to firmly voice your boundaries, your limitations, etc.? Do you feel that you should firmly be able to give consent and retract consent? And if the answer to these questions is yes, then is there a part of you inside that also feels like you should should be able to open up about desires, talk about desires, agree to try new things together, and have more space held for what you want in the situation. And if you believe yes to those things as well, if your answer to that is yes too, then why are you denying that to yourself? And why are you potentially not giving a loving and willing partner the chance to please you in a way that maybe you haven't expressed an interest in before? Whereabouts would you like to leave your comfort zone a little bit when it comes to your sex life? Everybody that's watching this is going to be in a different kind of situation. Some people are going to have a very, very long-term sexual partner that they've been with for years, and maybe their sexual interests have changed over time and they feel a little bit uncomfortable about that new territory and they haven't shared that with their partner. Some people are going to be single and not even maybe currently looking for a partner, or don't have one in their midst right now. Other people are going to be realizing as they're watching this that they really don't know what they want sexually and they would like to go on a journey to find that out. And all of these areas of things are completely valid. If you're watching this video, you could be in any number of different situations, right, in your life journey. But wherever you are, I would definitely ask you to think about where your comfort zone is and how you might like to leave it. And that could be sitting down with your partner and having a big conversation and just getting everything out and just, you know, explaining how you feel about things and how things may have changed for you or whatever. Or it could be that next time you're having a sexual encounter with somebody, you would just like to challenge yourself to be a little bit more confident and a little bit more free-flowing and not as self-conscious and not as insecure, and see how that goes for you. You might feel that leaving your comfort zone would involve initiating sex more, you know, just really initiating the act more, or being sensual more of the time around a sexual partner. You might feel that any number of things would involve leaving your comfort zone. In fact, for some people watching this, the first part where I suggested like feel the wind in your hair, lie naked on the bed, roll around in massage oil, all of that kind of shit is going to be really fucking out there for some people, and they're going to be like, oh Kelly, I don't want to do any of this weird shit. So it really depends where your line is and how you want to sensually dance over it, darling. Tons of people watching this are going to be feeling that the main reason that they're not sexually confident or not sexually adventurous is because they've got body insecurity. And to that I would say that sometimes it's really important for you to be more comfortable with your body before you can feel more comfortable with anyone else being more comfortable with your body. So be naked more of the time, walk around your home naked, be naked in your own company. If you don't sleep naked, maybe start sleeping naked. Maybe observe yourself in the mirror more often, maybe talk to your body, maybe spend more time touching your body, feeling it in the shower, etc. You know, those kinds of things, so that you feel more connected with your body. And it's also really useful to listen to the stories of others who have felt as though they weren't connected with their body and they did have body insecurity, and then a catalyst came along and just changed everything for them, and they started to recognize that actually their body is a beautiful vessel, it's a meat suit that gets them through this human experience, and they started to really appreciate their body so much more. And there are stories about that all over the fucking place at this point in our human history. Lots and lots and lots of people talking about body acceptance and body positivity and being in your body and feeling your body and, you know, just really kind of embracing it. If you shit talk your body a lot of the time, I want you to just ask yourself for a second how you think that plays out for you in terms of your sexual life and sexuality as a thing for you in your life. If you shit talk your body on the daily, how is that going to affect the way that you are sexual with people and with yourself? Learn about your body, learn about what it wants, learn about what it can do, learn about it in different ways than you learned about it before. Be more upfront with it, be closer with it, be with it more of the time. I know it sounds weird because you're in it all the time, how can you escape from it? And I get that. But the thing is, a lot of people are escaping from it. A lot of people are walking around in their little meat suit, but they don't want to have anything to do with their meat suit. They do not want to interact with their meat suit. They are constantly angry with their meat suit. They're constantly shit talking their meat suit. And that is going to have knock-on effects in all kinds of different aspects of life, not only with regard to the sexual element of things, but across the board. So we need to think about how unhealthy that is and how damaging it can be when we let shit talk go unnoticed, unchecked and unchallenged. If talking about sex was taboo in your family, or you've just always felt weird talking about sex, that might be a comfort zone that you want to dance outside of a little bit. There are some people that don't feel comfortable talking about sex. I'm certainly not one of them, but there are a lot of people that do feel uncomfortable talking about it. But you may find that there are people in your life, or there are people online that will talk about it with you and really want to get into those discussions and find that to be of interest. Maybe you're feeling backed up in a away communication wise. There are things that you want to get out, that you want to get off your chest. And if you don't feel comfortable writing those things down, try to find a way that you can feel comfortable talking about them. And you might feel that that involves some kind of counsellor or therapist, but for a lot of people it's just talking to a friend and really connecting on that level. If you have sexual insecurities, or if you have sexual problems that you've never really confided in somebody about before, and maybe you feel like they're problems that only affect you, researching them online could be really interesting and useful, because you will be highly surprised to find that your incredibly rare problem that only you have is a problem that is way more common than you realised, and you may be able to find some really useful resources about it. The internet is such a fucking blessing. It's a curse and a blessing all at once. And in this particular situation, it's a massive blessing, because if you feel super insecure about something sexually, or you've got a problem you've never really kind of opened up to somebody about, the internet can be a great way to research it without feeling as though you're taking such a massive risk that you can barely breathe, you can barely open your mouth to say what you need to say. The internet will allow you to research it quietly without getting anyone involved, discreetly, and you may well be able to find some input there that is really helpful to you and helps you feel better and less alone in your situation. If you're dealing with sexual trauma, or if you're coping with anything that you feel is unresolved that is connected to sexuality or sensuality, there is no shame in that. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to talk to people that you trust. Don't be afraid to seek help. Do not brush it under the rug. Do not downplay it. Try not to tell yourself that you should be over it or it shouldn't affect you. If it's affecting you, it's affecting you. And for me, in my life, one of the best things has been to just communicate about it with people I trust, and to get that sense of empathy and understanding. For other people, it is going to be a different situation. I can't tell people who to communicate with or when to communicate with people. What I can tell you is that there is no shame in the fact that you need to go through a process to resolve whatever it is inside of you that's still ongoing after something's happened to you that's kind of knocked you in that area and is making you feel weird about sexuality and sensuality. And it's completely okay to acknowledge that that is a process and that is a journey that you will need to go on. There's so many more ideas that I have and so many more things that I could say. I could be here literally for the rest of the day talking about this, but there's just a couple more things I want to say. First of all, do not ever be afraid to utilize a safety word. It does not matter what that safety word is for. Safety words are not just for people who engage in, pain play in the bedroom. They're not just for people on the BDSM scene. Safety words can be super useful for anyone. If you feel like cuddling your partner naked is high risk for you, and you get very stressed about what is going to happen next, or you just feel overwhelmed or whatever, use a safety word for that. Honestly, utilize a safety word for anything. It's okay to use it for anything, and it can often just make experiences where you are lacking in sexual confidence or where you are not sure what you want feel a lot safer and more enjoyable for you, because you know that you've got that understanding between yourself and your partner. Obviously, this is only a suggestion for people who want to be having some form of sexual contact with someone else. If you do not want to be having it, do not be having it, okay? But if it's a consensual experience where you really want to have that sexual experience with that person, but you're feeling nervous or you're feeling underconfident, or you don't know if you're going to want to stop or change things up, use a safety word, even if it's just red for stop, yellow for change what you're doing, and green for carry on. Sometimes that can be really useful. It can provide you with a feeling of empowerment when you need it. And the last thing I want to mention as well is that if you feel that there is quite a lot of pressure to be sexual with a partner when you don't feel like it, or when you don't know whether or not you feel like it, and your partner is a lot more sexually confident than you or seems to want to do more sexually, don't be afraid to talk about the potential of scheduling in time to be sexual. I know it sounds really cold and really kind of sterile and clinical, but it can work wonders for a couple that do want to be sexual together but have fairly different sex drives. And if you feel overwhelmed by sex or underconfident with sex, or you're just going through a weird time of trying to figure out what you want sexually, it can actually be really freeing and really calming to know that there is a set night of the week that you guys are sexual together, and the rest of the time you can just enjoy non-sexual intimacy like cuddles and holding hands and kissing, and it's not going to go anywhere sexual. Sometimes that can really just take the pressure the fuck off, okay? It can really take the kettle off the stove, and it can make you feel like you can lean into your sensuality without the pressure for it to turn into a sexual act. So definitely keep that in mind as well. I really hope that these ideas were useful. So much love, and I will see you in the next installment. Don't forget to use the hashtag to say anything you want to say or share any of your stories or ideas. Much love and self-love. Until next time, chickens, blessed be.